Hello BookTube, Books with Banks back again with another video, another review for you today. And today I'm going to review a collection of shorter fiction in Fritz Leiber's Lankhmar, aka the Fafhrd and Gray Mouser series of novellas and short stories. So this will be a spoiler-free review of my introduction to a world, characters, and a writer that it just so happens one of my favorite fantasy authors, Mr. Steven Erikson of Malazan Book of the Fallen, he has cited this author as, and these stories as some of his inspiration for that world. So here we go. Swords and Deviltry is the first collection of short stories in Fritz Leiber's Fafhrd and Gray Mouser series. Now, this is a series, all of the short stories that he wrote, it's a series about Fafhrd, more of your like typical quote-unquote barbarian character with several quirks that subvert our kind of Howard Conan-esque expectations of what a barbarian might be like. So you have Fafhrd, that's who that is, on the one hand, and then on the other you have his friend, the Gray Mouser, who is a talented young sorcerer slash thief and like sword fighter, a knife fighter, and the two of them, they go on several adventures and misadventures throughout and around the city of Lankhmar and the regions and the country, the land around there. So Leiber published these sword and sorcery fantasy stories roughly between like 1938, 1939, and then 1988, 1989. And his stories were collected into 7 volumes in the 1970s. The first volume of which being this one here, Swords and Deviltry. In this one, the 4 stories included, while they were not the first Fafhrd and Gray Mouser stories ever published or ever written, but they were and they are the first chronologically in the lives of these characters. So first in here we have Induction, which is a short vignette that establishes the world and setting that our 2 characters are about to be introduced in. Second, the novella The Snow Women. This is a tale introducing us to the strong, wanderlusting, as well as just kind of regular lusting Fafhrd. And Fafhrd is eager to escape his stereotypically quote-unquote uncivilized culture and people up in the mountains. And he's forever mesmerized by the allure of civilization, regardless of what personal or cultural commitments he might have to abandon, and how he might have to abandon some of his people and some of his commitments to go look and learn more about civilization and go venture in that direction. So that's kind of what the second story in here is about. That's the first 68, 70 pages or so. And then third, we get the short story called The Unholy Grail, and this introduces us to the character, the Gray Mouser. In this story, there's a tragedy involving a magician who the Mouser is apprenticed to, and this tragedy strains the Mouser's relationship with his beloved and shows him kind of the temptation of some of like magic's darker side and the darker stuff with magic. And then finally, the 4th story, this is another novella, and this is called Ill Met in Lankhmar. And in this story, we get to see our 2 heroes meet up and befriend each other through comedic misadventure, but also through a few tragic circumstances that all of this sets them on track to presumably embark on the many adventures Leiber would write about them, or has written about them. So I do admit to some frustration, as I enjoyed the dynamic of these 2, Fafhrd and the Gray Mouser, so much in the final storyline once they actually met. And in hindsight, I think I wish I had either started with a later collection of stories that focus more on adventures of the 2 of them together, or maybe my wish could be more directed at this book, that some of the earlier stories in this collection were a little bit shorter so we could have gotten to that point a little more quickly. But really, all of that is just humble praise for how natural and human and sad and hilarious Leiber has made these 2 these 2 once they get together, once they're working together. Again, all that to say, I can't wait to read more of their adventures together. So now let's talk briefly about the function of each of these stories and whether or not I felt that if the stories were successful or not. So first, right off the bat, the vignette. This was not only a great introduction to the setting, but also a great introduction to Lieber's writing style. 10 out of 10, I would say it's a great way to be introduced to any new fantasy author and or setting. The style, what he did here with the short little vignette at the beginning. And second, we have the story that introduced Fafhrd. It's not my least favorite of this collection, but Leiber does go to certain lengths to highlight Fafhrd's character flaws. So it can be a bit odd reading him as a protagonist sometimes when Leiber, in an effort to make Fafhrd a little bit more human and more realistic, has written this character to be so easily criticized. And there is a good bit of world building here to praise. I also love the introduction, kind of narrowing into this act of violence, like the introduction of this story, narrowing down into this act of violence. That's sort of the cultural background rationalizing the violence that a lot of these women in these mountain tribes are about to commit. But then there are some bizarre tonal whiplash moments later on. We go from Fafhrd's fear of his mother and his culture's icy hold on him, which is beautiful imagery throughout, by the way, everything with the ice here. And then we go straight from that kind of more serious stuff to his lusting after an actress. He's traveling from the city. Then we go to his stealing fireworks to try a dangerous ski jump, something, adventurous and a little bit zany. And really, between those three kind of different things, and those are just a few examples, the tone is a little bit all over the place in this story. All in all, it was enough of a story to hook me into this world, especially with Leiber's portrayal of that icy grip our families and our cultures can have on us, that can keep us from, really going out and exploring other more diverse ways of life, diverse worlds. Really, really fascinating stuff there, kind of seeded into like early days of the Fafhrd character development. And I hope future stories kind of pick up on that a little bit more. Then the third story was probably my least favorite. There was too much kind of class-based tension between the kind of two characters who we're told are in love with each other. And all of that tension, through that, it was difficult to root for them to wind up together, especially with kind of how violently they seem to dislike each other and to distrust each other and their choices or circumstances throughout the entire story. So I didn't feel like I got to know the Gray Mouser here as much as I got to know Fafhrd in the first novella either. That was another kind of slight problem I had with this one. But finally, moving on to the fourth and final story. This, I think, was the best of the bunch, and this is when Fafhrd and the Gray Mouser finally meet in Lankhmar, and they introduce each other to the respective loves of their lives. Leiber provides several rich and kind of dirty descriptions of the city of Lankhmar, from like every unique room and the purpose of the different rooms in a school for thieves, to the rooftops and the chimney stacks. It's so rich with description. And there's some really great comedy here, also with the two protagonists first getting drunk, then they, try out disguises as beggars to sneak into a thief's, this kind of thief school, or thief palace kind of. And when they try that, then they're mistaken for being thieves that work there, just pretending to be beggars. So like the disguise didn't work, but it sort of did, and so on. And that kind of joke keeps going for a lot of this story. I really, really enjoyed that. There's some great stuff that Leiber deploys to very naturally build the Fafhrd and Gray Mouser relationship and camaraderie. And then, if the two didn't already fit together well enough, there's also some really unfortunate and tragic events that transpire. And those, I don't want to spoil too much, but those will undoubtedly bound these two together for life. All that to say, in these four stories, Leiber has introduced and brought together two protagonists who have flaws on their own, and I feel like their stories, their individual introduction stories might have had a few flaws on their own. And I'm not sure he ever succeeds in making either of them truly compelling characters when they're by themselves. But those flaws only help to make them better companions to each other and to make this fourth story and hopefully several more going forward, all the more entertaining and engaging. Story by story, the collection was a bit of a mixed bag, but altogether I think it really works quite nicely. Anyway, that should do it for my review of Fritz Leiber's Swords and Deviltry. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, it would mean a lot if you could like and subscribe. Have a great day. Bye.